To find out more about his 3 times great-grandfather William Dunbar, who was an assistant surgeon in the Navy, Ed has come to Portsmouth to meet historian Simon Wills at the city's historic dockyard.
Oh my gosh. It's HMS Victory. If he actually served on HMS Victory with Nelson, Norfolk's Nelson, that would be astonishing. Come on. Woo. Come on. Come on.
For over 20 years, Ed Balls was a politician in the Labour Party.
I was always seen as a bruiser.
Mr. Ed Balls! They should listen, they might learn something, Mr. Speaker.
However hard politics can be, in the end, the purpose of politics is that you have the chance to change the world.
Ed is now famous for his acrobatic feats on Strictly Come Dancing and his bold political documentaries.
People often say, well, we knew you were a politician before, but now we found out you're a human being. And I kind of think, well, no, actually, I didn't really change.
Ed was born in 1967, the oldest child of Mike and Carolyn Balls, and spent his early years in a village outside Norwich.
We were a Labour family, that's just what we were, that's where we'd come from, that's what we believed in. I know really very, very little about our family history. I never met 3 of my 4 grandparents. My assumption is that we've always lived in Norfolk through the generations. I don't look across my extended family and see, you know, a maverick streak. My mum started to develop dementia 15 years ago now. In the last 2 or 3 years, she's lived in a very good care home in the centre of Norwich.
Hi there, Mum, it's Ed. How are you? It's been quite a few months since we were able to come and visit. Did you meet Susie just before the lockdown, Mum? She's a lovely dog.
She has lost a lot of, you know, what I remember as being my mum.
I think you smiled there, which is quite nice.
One of the things about dementia is that my mum can find it hard to remember what happened 5 minutes ago, and then if I start to sing a hymn, she'll know all the words.
And did the countenance divine shine forth upon those clouded hills, and was Jerusalem...
And I guess what it makes me realise now is that I wish I'd had the conversations with her in the way that I should have done, but maybe this will be a chance to tell her some things she didn't know and to maybe make some connections which will still make sense to her today.
This is one of the few pictures John and I have with our mother and father.
Gosh.
It's a lovely picture.
It's definitely Uncle John on the left, because he's got the Uncle John smile.
Yeah.
Ed's come back to Norwich to visit his dad Mike and his dad's older brother John to see what they can tell him about their side of the family.
We have a certain look, a certain build, a certain strength, and I've always assumed that this was fundamentally a Norfolk farming stock, that for generations past we've done things in the field, we've lifted, we've carried, that we can carry on from dawn until dusk, that we are basically solid Norfolk Anglo-Saxon agricultural workers.
No.
No.
No?
We think our background is rather middle class.
One of the stories in the family on father's side has always been that one of our ancestors was the surgeon on Nelson's ship, the Victory.
Surgeon?
A surgeon.
On Nelson's ship?
Yeah.
Goodness, that must have been a tough job on a ship in a war.
But that's a rumour.
So your grandfather, on your dad's side, he was called Frank.
Frank.
And what did he do?
He was an accountant by training, but he was very much involved with Norwich Prison, and he was well known for being very helpful to prisoners as they were released. This is our grandfather then, Frank.
Goodness.
And this is Jessie Dunbar, our Scottish grandmother. And I think her father was a cathedral architect. She was quite distinguished in her background.
Gosh.
We don't know any more about her.
How did he marry a Scottish woman called Jessie from the Dunbar family?
We don't know.
Ed's been given a couple of intriguing clues. He's starting with his great-grandmother, Jessie Dunbar, and has ordered her marriage certificate to find out more about Jessie and the family she was from.
So, April the 4th, 1888. Frank Balls, aged 28, marries Jessie Maria Dunbar, 27. He lives at 7, I think, Queen Street, Norwich. And she lives at 135 High Street, Ramsgate, in the county of Kent. Interestingly, Jessie's father is Henry Douglas Dunbar, who's a painter. My dad thought he was an architect, but it says he's a painter. Other than the name Dunbar, there's no Scottishness here and a lot of Kent. I need to find out what the story is of Jessie's father. So who is Henry Douglas Dunbar? Was he born in Scotland? Henry Dunbar. Don't know his date of birth. I do know that he's in Kent. Let me just try Kent first. Here we are. Henry Douglas, 1832, Kent baptisms. Let's see. Gosh. September the 2nd, 1832, Henry Douglas, son of William and Sally Dunbar. Abode of William, Scarborough. Oh my gosh. It's not a place, it's a ship. HMS ship Scarborough. And his profession. Oh my goodness. Assistant surgeon in the Royal Navy. Oh, I see. My dad, my uncle, mentioned a surgeon on a Royal Navy ship with Admiral Nelson, maybe at Trafalgar, and family folklore starts to have a little bit of basis in fact. Who is William Dunbar, Royal Navy surgeon? What did he do in his life?
To find out more about his 3 times great-grandfather William Dunbar, who was an assistant surgeon in the Navy, Ed has come to Portsmouth to meet historian Simon Wills at the city's historic dockyard.
Oh my gosh. It's HMS Victory. If he actually served on HMS Victory with Nelson, Norfolk's Nelson, that would be astonishing.
The Victory is the Royal Navy's most famous warship and served as the flagship of Vice Admiral Lord Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, the Navy's most brilliant triumph in the wars against the French leader, Napoleon, and his allies. The Royal Navy's tactics and superiority won the battle, but Nelson, the country's great naval hero, was shot by a French sniper and tragically died on board the ship during the fighting.
I honestly can't believe that one of my ancestors was actually capable of being a surgeon on a ship. I know I couldn't do it. I know my dad couldn't do it. I cut my knee when I was 6. He rushed me to hospital. And then while I was in Big Stitched, he collapsed on a row of bikes and had to be admitted himself. The sight of blood has always been terrible for us. Good afternoon, Simon.
Hello, Ed. Very nice to meet you.
Good to see you too.
You'll be pleased to know that your ancestor William did work on HMS Victory.
Right, good.
But it wasn't until 1826.
Right.
So 20 years or so after Nelson died at the Battle of Trafalgar.
Right, right. So I was imagining him down on the deck below, dealing with, the heat and the noise of battle, sawing off limbs, Nelson stricken on the ship, being tended by my 3 times great-grandfather.
No, I'm afraid not.
That's okay, that's okay.
So William's job as the assistant surgeon was to tend to the health of all the people working on board. And the crew could easily get to Portsmouth waterfront where there were lots of prostitutes, so he'd spend a lot of his time treating things like venereal disease.
Oh, I see.
That sort of thing. So I've got a couple of documents here. This one is part of William's service record.
Each one of these a different ship?
It is.
So the Rainbow, 17th of May 1811, assistant surgeon.
That's right.
It looks like he's an assistant surgeon all the way through his career.
Pretty much.
Never becomes a full surgeon.
No. But during his career, he did see some action.
Right.
So can you see HMS Piercer here?
1813, well, that's 2 years before Waterloo, so this is the end of the war with France.
That's right. So he did have his bit of action.
So he didn't serve at Trafalgar, but he served in the Napoleonic Wars.
But he did, absolutely, yes. So these are a couple of the tools similar to the ones that William would have used.
They look like butcher's tools rather than precise medical instruments, don't they? Can I touch
Absolutely, yeah, please do.
Gosh, it's...
So that is an amputation saw.
Oh my goodness, it's heavy. It's really heavy.
It is heavy.
It's got to cut through bone.
That's right. And this knife here is an amputation knife. So this would have been cutting off a leg. This would have been stabbed into the thigh, quickly sliced around all the flesh right down to the bone.
And then
that goes in.
It's brutal.
And maybe most terrifying of all, when he was on HMS Childers, he was serving in the Caribbean then. But one of the men went down with yellow fever, and then another one, and then another one. And before they knew it, their ship was being overtaken by yellow fever, including William and including his boss, the surgeon.
So what would it have been like for the ship to have a huge outbreak of yellow fever like that?
Well, terrifying, because people in those days didn't understand about infectious disease and what caused it. We now know that yellow fever is caused by a virus and it's transmitted by mosquitoes. But if you're on the ship, all you saw is that he went down with yellow fever, but the man next to him didn't. And the usual way of treating yellow fever was to give mercury, which was highly poisonous, to give purgatives that made you get diarrhea, because they believed that if you purged the bowel, then you would cleanse the body. Can you imagine if you're potentially dying of a really severe, horrible infection and someone gives you diarrhea, gives you poisonous mercury and takes 2 litres of blood from you?
Yeah. But he survived it.
But he survived it. And round about half the crew of HMS Childers died of yellow fever.
Oh my gosh.
So how about this big gap? What's he doing?
There seems to be a gap between about 1834 and 1843 when he comes back to the Navy. But I have another document here. This is from the 1841 census.
Right. Here we are. William Dunbar. He's got a wife and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 children. Where's he living then? Does that say Herne?
It's in Kent.
Kent.
You need to find out what he was doing in Herne in Kent, because I think that's the answer to your question. What did he do in those 9 years?
So the mystery of the naval records of my 3 times great-grandfather is that there's this big gap in the middle of his career. I know from the documents that in 1841, in the census, he's definitely in Kent. So if I do a search for William Dunbar, and I know he's a surgeon, Any results? Evening Mail, Friday the 26th to Monday the 1st of March 1841. Let me search that. Blean Union, Kent. So Blean Union is the workhouse. And it's about two paupers who died at the workhouse. And my 3 times great-grandfather is the surgeon.
Blean Union Workhouse in Kent was built in 1835, shortly after a new poor law was brought in to slash the cost of looking after the poor. It forced paupers who needed financial support into the workhouses and attempted to remove poor relief payments for those that refused to go in. The early workhouses were a hostile environment, designed to deter all but the most desperate from seeking help.
It's Dickensian in its horror, this. So John Moyes, who was 73, dies in the sick room of the workhouse. In the last 6 years of his life, his mind had been affected, it says. So much deranged. But his intellects were disordered. It sounds like he has some kind of dementia. And Dunbar directed the master to look after him and make sure he did no harm to himself or others. The governor ordered him to be put into a room by himself, without any fire. The severeness of the weather drove him to madness. He tore off his clothes. He kicked off his shoes. He broke his knuckles against the door. He was trying to get out. Blood everywhere. It doesn't sound like the master listened to my 3 times great-grandfather when he told him to make sure he didn't harm himself. But there were some other marks on the body, round marks on the forehead and temple. The left side of the head was black, as of blows, which the surgeon said nothing, except that he hadn't seen them.
Workhouses were a cheaper alternative for the authorities than the asylums, so were often used to house very vulnerable people. The regime also encouraged the use of solitary confinement and food deprivation as punishments for all paupers who stepped out of line.
There's a second case, Thomas Knowles, who died in the workhouse aged 18. Thomas Knowles had been blind since infancy. The diet of the workhouse wasn't suited to him. They simply gave him bread and butter, gruel and tea. Done by the surgeon. He said there was nothing the matter with Knowles. There'd never been anything the matter with him. So the coroner directed an inquest to be held, and when they opened the coffin, they found every rib and bone was prominent and elongated. Basically starves. And the question is, why didn't the surgeon, Dunbar, do anything about this?
In both cases, the workhouse is, and the master of the workhouse is mistreating one inmate and not feeding another. But in both cases, the accusation is that William Dunbar is an accessory.
The jury were occupied some time in deliberating upon what verdict they should return, some of them proposing a verdict of manslaughter against the master and surgeon. But the jury is warned by the coroner not to find them guilty of manslaughter.
It's really hard in the space of a few hours to go from celebrating the public service of William Dunbar. His Navy record is about fighting, helping to defend our country. That feels like a noble pursuit, but to then read these accounts of the poorest and the most vulnerable being mistreated cruelly, and to read that he might have been part of that. So from pride to deep concern. I don't want to be ashamed. I'm related to him. I don't want him to be part of the cruelty. I want him to be one of the good guys, not one of the bad guys.
Ed is travelling to Blean in Kent to understand more about the scandal involving his 3 times great-grandfather, William Dunbar. He's meeting historian Professor Alana Tompkins.
Hello.
So that is the workhouse where William Dunbar was a surgeon?
That's right, yes. A lot of it survives. It's all been turned into housing now.
It all looks quite clean and modern. It felt, reading those articles, through my eyes now, in the 21st century, that this was like a deliberate, cruel cover-up. What was William Dunbar doing? Why wasn't he saving people?
Ultimately, we can't be sure whether he was being cruel or merely neglectful, but essentially the buck stops with the workhouse master,
right,
because he is in charge of this institution. The surgeon might say, well, this person needs treatment, and the workhouse master could say, no, they don't. And it wouldn't be the first time that a doctor was essentially made the scapegoat in a case like this. Everyone turns around and faces the surgeon and says, it's you're to blame, you're the one who should have noticed this.
Was he a full-time employee of the workhouse, or would this have been something he did as part of his broader surgeon's practice?
The idea was that this was part of a surgeon's practice and that you would take on private patients and do other work as well. So there might be perhaps up to 100 people in the workhouse at any one time, but don't forget there are also 4,000 living in the surrounding parishes.
4,000, which he was responsible for?
That he's responsible for when they fall sick. Your ancestor, William Dunbar, and he's running from pillar to post.
Right.
He possibly can't do all of the work that's being asked of him in a day. The number of medical suicides goes up after about 1840.
Medical suicide?
Yeah.
People just couldn't cope with the job.
They couldn't cope. I think the question of where the blame for the cruelty lies is the critical one for the Poor Law. This is 1841, which is less than a decade after the passage of the Poor Law, which says that the poor are essentially to blame. That is the tenor of the Poor Law. It casts the poor as criminals. It was structurally cruel. A few years after the experiences of Dunbar here, there was a scandal where it was found that the workhouse master in Andover in Hampshire was starving the paupers in his workhouse so badly that when he set them to work on grinding bones, which was for the production of fertiliser, they would scoop out the rotting bone meal from the inside of the bones they were supposed to be crushing to eat because they were so hungry.
I mean, it's awful. I guess my worry reading this Dickensian horror show at this workhouse is that maybe William Dunbar was part of the family, part of the cruelty, and you're saying that the jury's out, that it could be that he was just under pressure, didn't see or didn't have the power to do anything about it.
I think the jury is definitely out. I think he was trapped.
So do we know why Dunbar left being the surgeon here?
We do have some more details, but those records are in the Kent Archives in Maidstone. This is where the original documents relating to the Blean Workhouse Union are held. So if you want to have a quick look at this book here.
Right. It says Blean Union Minute Book.
Yep.
Blean Union, 11th of May, 1843. At a meeting of the Board of Guardians held this day, the governor means, that means the head of the workhouse, the
That's
master.
Mr. Bailey, the master.
Complained to the board that Mr. Dunbar, oh dear, that Mr. Dunbar has taken improper liberties with his eldest daughter, a girl of about 16 years of age. Goodness.
Well, this is the daughter of the governor, Mr. Bailey. So this is the schoolmistress of the workhouse.
Mr. Dunbar admitted that he kissed her several times, that he promised her a ring, that he pulled her about, but denied having exposed his person to her. Bloody hell.
She's been in this room on her own with him, and this has happened. What we don't know is what was involved beyond what he's admitted to.
He admits to kissing the 16-year-old girl. I mean, that's bad enough. Whether or not he went further, I mean, going further makes it worse, but it's terrible anyway. I mean, this is a man in his late 40s with 8 kids who starts kissing a 16-year-old girl. You can't do that. Even, I think, in 1843, you can't do that, especially in 2020, you can't.
In 1843, we're in a world where 16-year-olds might get married much more regularly than they do today, I think. But we're also in a world where men, particularly men who regard themselves as gentlemen, who are professional people, they could behave in a certain way towards women they regard as their social inferiors.
So you're saying to me that even that in 1843, this was not out of the ordinary?
I'm afraid this is a world where people treat women very differently. There's a series of cases where medical practitioners are accused of sexual assault or rape, much worse than Dunbar here. And when they go to court, those practitioners are acquitted for the most part, and they're applauded from court.
Applauded?
Yes, they're applauded from court. Even where it's clear that sex has taken place, they're applauded from court if they're acquitted. So this is a society which likes its medical practitioners to be its heroes.
I understand. I spent 3 years as the Secretary of State for Children making the borderline decisions about teachers, and if a teacher was to kiss a 16-year-old girl, they would be banned from not only teaching but ever working with children again. It's a roller coaster with old Mr. Dunbar for me.
Mm-hmm.
Hero, villain, reprieve, back in the dock.
Mm-hmm.
What an idiot.
So if you look at the top document in this box, you'll see what happened to Dunbar next.
I almost daren't open it. May the 18th, 1843. Gentlemen, I beg leave to resign my situation as surgeon.
He resigns. He decides not to front it out. He was in an impossible situation before this allegation in terms of his workload. I think this may have been the final straw.
Oh dear. William Dunbar's obituary is being written 170 years later,
Yes.
and it's quite a complicated one. By his great, great, great grandson. We live in a time where powerful men have taken advantage of women, often younger women. My youngest daughter's 16. Done what 48-year-old men with 8 kids kissing her. And William Dunbar in 2020, that is well over the line. In the end, he's my ancestor, and it's nearly 200 years ago, and it's for the historians to say it's a different time, it's a different context. Emotionally, for me, seeing that, I react as me today. And that's why I was upset. I mean, he was an idiot, it was wrong.
Now he's solved the naval mystery on his dad's side and discovered the scandals of William Dunbar's life, Ed wants to explore his mother Caroline Riseborough's family. She grew up in Norwich, so he's meeting genealogist Celia Heritage at the city's Guildhall.
Good afternoon, Celia.
Hello, Ed.
Thank you so much for helping.
It's a pleasure.
So I'm investigating my maternal line and my mum's dad's family, the Riseborough line.
OK, well, I've been doing some investigating, and there is a copy of the tree here for you to look
great.
at.
Oh, good.
And you can see we've got quite a few generations back here.
OK. So there's me down the bottom.
Yep.
There's my mum, Carolyn. Here is her father, Wesley and Hilda Emma Spellman. My mum and dad had a daughter born just a year after I was born, but she was born prematurely and she just lived for a few hours. And she was called Emma. But until this moment, I've never realised, and she was named after my mum's mother, Hilda Emma Spellman. It's also up here, Emma Green.
Yes.
So we're Greens as well as Riseboroughs, I didn't know.
You are indeed.
And Emma is the daughter of Elisha Green. Wow, this family, the children are Timothy, Sophia, Christopher, Levi, Cornelius, Elisha and Eli. They're fancy names.
And they were all the children of Christopher Green and Mary Rivet.
Christopher Green and Mary Rivet. Now, Mary is from Norfolk and Christopher Green is from Fursfield.
Which is near Winfarthing, so it's about 20 miles from Norwich.
Oh, so this is all still pretty Norfolk?
Oh, very much Norfolk at the moment,
Good.
yes. And Christopher Green, he was an agricultural labourer.
Was he?
He was.
Good, I'm pleased.
A lot of people are disappointed when they find out they've got agricultural labourer, and they said, oh, they're boring. Well, I've been doing some investigating on Christopher Green.
Right.
And we turned up something very interesting. So if you'd like to have a look at this extract from the Norfolk Chronicle dated 1822.
Here we are. Jonathan Garrett, Christopher Green, Charles Abbott, William James, John Reeve, Daniel Elsey, Thomas Davy the Younger and Nelson Davy were severally indicted for having riotously and tumultuously assembled with other persons at Winfarthing and removing, taking away and destroying a threshing machine. When the prisoners came up, so they're prisoners, they've actually been arrested and imprisoned.
Yes, they have. Read on.
Proceeded to take the horse part of the engine to pieces. Having taken it as far as Shelfanger, they threw it in a pit there and left it. Prisoners were none of them armed with any kind of weapons and appeared to have used no violence in affecting their object. This was a rebellion. So they were rebelling against the machinery and saying, we'll throw it in a pit because we should be doing the job and we don't want to see our jobs taken away by this machine. Is that what's going on?
Absolutely. And this is a serious offence.
This was a political act.
This rebellion by poor agricultural labourers spread across Norfolk, the breadbasket of England, in the 1820s. Labourers, hired by the day and paid a pittance, were in competition for work with soldiers, returning from the Napoleonic Wars during a deep depression. The situation was aggravated by the introduction of threshing machines. Men like Ed's four-times great-grandfather Christopher Green then lost their traditional winter threshing work, beating the grain from the stems of the wheat, as they were replaced with cheaper and more efficient horse-powered machines. The hated threshing machines were destroyed so frequently in Norfolk that it became near impossible for farmers to insure them.
So he would have been tried here in this building. Would you like to come and see where he would have been sentenced?
He'd been tried in the Guildhall in Norwich?
Yeah.
Wow. I'd love to see it.
OK, come with me then.
Definitely. So, this is the courtroom where my four-times great-grandfather's trial would have been.
So the trial would have taken place here, 13th October 1822.
So, this is the dock where he'd have stood to be tried and sentenced nearly 200 years ago. For an agricultural labourer to end up being taken, imprisoned from the countryside to Norwich into this formal court, it must have been hugely intimidating.
Yeah, it would have been, outside his experience, something overwhelming.
I feel a bit nervous being in the dock. So it says on this prison record, jury says guilty, Christopher Green be imprisoned 12 calendar months in Swaffham Bridewell. Is Swaffham Bridewell an actual prison?
It would have been one of the nearest prisons that could have taken long-term prisoners.
Coming into this, I had no idea that one of my ancestors would be being sent to prison this way. But what I don't know is what's in his mind. I'm sure inside he's scared standing here. But is he a hardened political activist who's thinking, send me to jail? But he's defiant because this is his cause? Or is he just an ordinary farm labourer who was trying to defend his family and his livelihood from machines taking over, and suddenly he's thrown in prison for a year, and who's going to look after his kids and his wife? And it's a disaster. And is he standing here thinking, do to me what you will? Or is he thinking, what have I done? What have I done?
Swaffham Bridewell, where Christopher was sent, no longer exists. So Ed is heading to nearby Walsingham Bridewell, which was also operating in the 1820s, to learn more about Christopher's imprisonment from historian Dr. Rose Wallace.
Hi there.
Hi, Ed.
Rose.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Good to see you too.
Welcome to Walsingham Bridewell. Would you like to see some of the cells inside?
Definitely, yeah. With trepidation. Gosh, it's dark.
Yeah.
Is that the cell?
This is the sort of cell that he would have been in.
It's quite a small, claustrophobic space for one man to be locked up in.
So you'd have more than one prisoner in a cell like this, up to 3.
3 people in here
Yeah.
for a year. And was 12 months for that crime, was that usual?
There were about 123 people charged with riot and machine breaking in East Anglia for that kind of round of activity in 1822 that Christopher Green was part of. There were sentences ranging from as little as a week in prison right through to 2 years. So Christopher's is very much at the higher end of the scale, but that's because he was identified as being one of those most active in that incident of machine breaking.
Makes my skin crawl, kind of like somebody walks over your grave. Makes me feel twitchy.
Ed, would you like to come and see some of the other spaces?
Sure. Gosh. Gets darker and darker. So what is this?
So we think this was the solitary confinement punishment cell. So this would be a cell where you would be kept isolated as part of a punishment for misbehaving during your sentence. And it would be a dark cell, so you would have all light deprived from you.
I thought the other cell was claustrophobic, but this is much worse. It's so... the walls kind of push you in, and at night especially would have been awful.
So we've got an image here of the sort of activity that Christopher would have been engaged in as hard labour.
Are they turning a wheel?
Yeah, this is a treadmill.
Was it designed and built to be driven by the prisoners?
Absolutely. These were intended as part of that labouring punishment.
How many hours a day would they do this for?
In 1823, so around the time Christopher was at Swaffham, it was usually 6 hours on this. We know that one person died at Swaffham not long after Christopher had been held there. He'd actually crouched down to talk to one of the other prisoners. Now, as he came up, he trapped his head, and his head was crushed by the wheel.
So this is not just hard, it's quite dangerous labour.
Yeah.
So what happened to Christopher's family, to Mary and the kids, while he was locked up here for 12 months? I mean, did they have no income to survive on?
Well, we've got a document here that helps us to understand what happened to them. This is a couple of pages from the overseer's account book.
What does that mean?
So the overseers were responsible for giving out parish relief, and we have a reference here to Christopher Green's family.
Here we are, here's a Green. It says 5 shillings to Green's wife lying in. What does lying in mean?
So lying in is for her confinement for the delivery of her child.
She's pregnant. Gosh. So he's taken an even bigger risk than I realised by doing this action.
Yeah.
If Christopher had committed a murder or an act of violence, I'd feel differently, but he was actually trying to defend his family, his way of life. It's clear from the court report that they didn't act in a violent way. What he was doing was an act of protest. If I'd been there with Christopher, I'd probably been breaking the machines with him.
So after Christopher had served his 12 months, he does get to return to his wife and his children in the village of Winfarthing, and I'd like you to come with me there next. So, Ed, this is Winfarthing Lodge Farm, and we know that your 4 times great-grandfather, Christopher Green, was here.
He was here?
Yes.
Did he work here?
I've got some documents here which will help explain his connection to this farm. So, Ed, I'd like you to have a look at this document I found. It's a newspaper report from 1832.
OK. On Friday last, before a bench of magistrates at Diss, Norfolk, just down the road, 3 men, inhabitants of Winfarthing, named Christopher Green, William Eben and Robert Hubbard, labourers, were charged on a suspicion of having set fire to the premises of the manor house called Winfarthing Lodge, that's where we are, by which act all the farming buildings were totally destroyed. The farmers would see him as a terrorist, wouldn't they? I mean, he's definitely a radical.
Yes. So this one is another newspaper account which gives a bit more detail.
So this is also 1832.
Yeah.
The late fire at Winfarthing. An act marked with such inveterate malice and diabolical cruelty, it was hardly possible to have thought any person in a Christian country could have been deliberately guilty of. 7 fine weaning calves were burnt to death by the falling in of the roof before they could be got out. And the young man who first set about removing the cattle assured us that he had been only 6 minutes later, because there's a cry from the cow in solidarity. 7 fat bullocks and other livestock would have fallen victims to the same horrid catastrophe. It's quite different from 10 years before.
This is happening in 1832, which is just 2 years after the conclusion of the swing disturbances in 1830. Norfolk was one of the most disturbed counties in what was a huge phase of social protest by agricultural labourers across 20 different counties in England. And we see the destruction of threshing machines again. We see riots and protests about wage rates again, and that experience of poverty, somewhere like Norfolk, breaks down social relations to the point where we are in a sort of rural war.
Yeah.
And we know that in Wynfarthing, the farmers had a bad reputation for not paying their labourers' wages properly. And we know that they relied on supplements from the poor rates to help keep their wages down. They expected people like Christopher to claim relief so they didn't have to pay him.
The bosses have got the law on their side because it would have been pretty difficult to take legitimate action, so they're doing it by burning.
Hard to detect an arsonist because they work under cover of night. But that might account for the level of vengeance.
I guess my politics would take me to wanting to have a legitimate strike, but not necessarily wanting to torch the whole place.
The problem is, though, they can't withdraw their work. They can't strike and get anywhere with these people because the farmers have the upper hand. They have no incentive, really, to pay them anymore unless the labourers protest.
If you give in and you don't stand up and you don't ask for change and you aren't a radical, then you just put up with things which are unfair and unjust and nothing changes. And the question is, when do you step over into violence, and at what point do you weaken your cause by those actions? Maybe I'm thinking, look, you didn't have to do it this way. I'm thinking, thank God I'm not a politician anymore.
Would you like to find out what happens?
Yeah.
We've got one other newspaper report for you from the Bury and Norwich Post.
So on Thursday night, the Wynfarthing incendiaries, Christopher Green, William Eburn and Robert Hubbard were examined before the magistrate at the King's Head Inn, Diss, and were then fully committed to Norwich Castle to take their trial at the next assizes. Arson is clearly a more serious charge than just breaking the machines.
Absolutely.
He's going to the assizes rather than the sessions. That is the more serious court, so...
Absolutely, that's the court which could pass the highest penalties, so...
And what could the highest penalty for arson be?
The highest penalty for arson at this point is death.
Death? For arson?
Arson was a capital crime.
So he could actually be hung for this?
He could be hanged for this. This is what's at stake here for Christopher.
10 years ago, this felt like a desperate guy defending his livelihood. This feels like a much, much more risky, reckless act.
Enormously so. He must have been aware of what those penalties were.
But being hung for that, that's always wrong.
Well, we should go to the castle and find out what happens.
We should.
Ed and Rose have come to Norwich Castle, where Christopher and the other men were taken in May 1832, after the arson attack.
So, Ed, this is the tunnel that Christopher would have been led through from the prison through to the courtroom to face his trial.
This feels medievally awful.
They would have put him in irons, so he would have had his ankles and his wrists ironed together, so he would have had to have stooped and walked the length of this very dark tunnel.
It feels cruel. It just brings home how desperate you must have been to have done what you've done, that it's come to this. So strange to have the chance to feel what it would have felt like 190 years ago.
Goodness. He's dragged from that horror into this.
This is the Shire Hall and the courtroom that Christopher was tried in.
Do you think Mary Green, is she in the courtroom? Would the family come?
If the family wanted to, or if they could physically afford to get here from Winfarthing, they could have come and sat in the public gallery.
They thought that it might be the last time they ever saw their dad and their husband, and Christopher Green walks through there thinking he's never going to see them again.
So, Ed, this is a page from the Assize jail book.
To be honest, I'm not that keen to look at it, really. I kind of feel a sombre impending doom here, I'm afraid. Here we are. Christopher Green the Elder, William Eben, Robert Dixon, Francis Mollets, stealing 1 ewe worth 20 shillings of Edmund bail. I thought they were here for arson and for killing a lot of livestock. What's going on?
This is the case that Green is prosecuted for.
So now you have me totally confused. Rose, what on earth is going on?
The arson charge is thrown out and it never proceeds to trial.
It's thrown out?
There's no record of the reason, and it's usually for want of evidence, but they do find this second charge.
So they're just charged with stealing 1 sheep?
But this is still a really serious offence.
Uh-huh.
When Christopher is incarcerated here, sheep stealing is also a capital charge.
Sheep stealing?
He could be hanged for sheep stealing.
Capital offence?
Yeah.
Just now I was feeling a bit more optimistic that this is good news, but now you're making me worried again.
This is the indictment against Christopher and his colleagues.
So it says, True Bill, Edmund Bale, Thomas Everett, Robert West, Robert Hubbard, Evidence Crown, 4 witnesses sworn in court.
These are the witnesses for the prosecution that would have presented evidence to the grand jury. But this is also how we understand why Christopher is facing this other charge of sheep stealing.
Robert Hubbard. I feel as though I know that name.
So Hubbard is one of the men taken up with Christopher Green in relation to the arson at Winfarthing. So he has turned evidence for the Crown.
What a snake. So he's a real turncoat.
He's done it to save his own neck, quite literally.
I've got to say, if you'd told me, as we look at all these documents, that I was related to Hubbard, I'd be feeling really depressed. Whereas being related to Christopher Green feels, at the moment, bleaker, but it feels like it's got more honour. But you can't take people's lives for a ewe. Can you?
If you turn over, though, we have the details of the charge here.
Okay.
But also the verdict.
Not guilty. Huh? Not guilty. God for that.
Would you like to read an account of the trial?
Well, I would now. I have to say, I was not wanting to before. It's so funny. I mean, it's 190 years ago, but actually, it's such a relief. I thought he was about to be hung. Huh? Christopher Green, acquitted of a charge of having on the 21st December last stolen a ewe sheep. This case rested almost entirely on the uncorroborated evidence of an accomplice who had never mentioned the matter till he was apprehended on suspicion of setting fire to some premises at Winfarthing.
The jury ultimately did have the final say.
And they say no, and he's not guilty. Surely we can get off this roller coaster.
We've got one last document.
So this is the death certificate of Christopher Green. He lived to 80. Cause of death, old age, Union Workhouse, Kenninghall. So he dies in the workhouse. I mean, his whole life was a life of struggle and of poverty. And he tried to do something about it. I mean, he didn't take it lying down. He was an activist. He was a campaigner. My mum wouldn't probably kind of understand all the detail of this now, but I think she'd be proud to know that he was a good man. Christopher Green didn't see progress in his lifetime, but there was progress because of the efforts of people like him. The ghosts of Greens and Riseborough's past. I'm so pleased for my mum that the deep politics of struggle to make the world a better place, to fight for justice and to improve the lot of the working people of this county was on the Riseborough line, her father's ancestors. And it doesn't surprise me because my mum was quiet but determined and always believed you could make the world a better place. And I think when I tell her, I think deep inside, she'll be really proud of her ancestors too.